Everyone who runs a business, especially if you're the owner of the business, one of your main focuses is growing your business, scaling your business. But in doing so, there's a lot of obstacles. When to hire people, how are we increasing marketing, what offerings should we have, what offerings should we delete? All of these stress points can be simplified if you follow the process that my guest recommends. Crista Grasso, she is the owner and leader of the LeanOut Method, where she consults with companies, both large and small, to help streamline their businesses so that they can scale. And one of the things that was fascinating in our conversation was this idea of simplification. Before you can add on, you have to simplify. Why? Because when you scale both the good but also the bad in your company. And if you're not focused on where some of these pain points potentially are, guess what? You may double your pain. So Chris is going to share strategies, very tactical. I love what she has to say, and I hope you do as well. So let's dive into today's episode of You're in Charge, Now What? With Crista Grasso. All right. So, Crista, let's dive right in. One of the things that has been a topic of conversation with some of my fellow entrepreneurs or people in different industries that I run across, and that's why I wanted to bring you on to answer this, is this idea of scaling a business. Everybody has goals set out in front of them where someone says, well, over the next 2 years, I want to double the size of my company or I need to scale or I need to hire. And it always seems like it's a frustrating or daunting task. So when you hear someone or you're being brought in to help an organization and someone says, all right, Crista, we want to scale the company. We want to double our size in X. What are the things that you're looking for to, one, see if they can do it, or two, some of the big obvious holes in their strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, right, scale sounds so attractive. Of course, we want to scale. We want to
Mhm.
double. We want to reach more people. We want to bring in way more money, right? There's all of these things. But what people don't always realize with scaling is you scale the good and you also scale the bad.
Hmm.
So, when you're in a period of scaling, I am a really big believer that you want to be really clear on what you do want to scale. You want to simplify first. You want to make sure that you have the right things in place in your business so that when you are scaling, you're getting more of what you want and not more of what you don't want. A lot of people will approach scaling as a way to solve issues. Well, my business isn't that profitable yet, so I'm going to scale. Well, you're going to scale being a whole lot more not profitable instead.
Right.
So you actually want to really be focused on really strategic growth in your business. You want to be leaning out your business and simplifying things. You want to be putting the right support and structures in place so that your business can actually sustain scaling, so that you're getting the results that you want from scaling. So I think those goals themselves are really great to have, and we would want to start there. I want to double my size by this date. Great. I think the next question then becomes, what's working really well in the business that we actually do want to go all in on and scale? And
Mhm.
what's not working so well in the business, or where if we all of a sudden had twice as many clients or twice as many team members, where is there going to start to be unsustainable issues in the business? Is customer experience going to suffer? Is internally we're not going to be able to keep up with things? And so I think you want to look at both angles of that when you're approaching scaling.
I love that because I just when I heard that, it just like a light bulb went off in my head because we tend to only focus on the good, that when we're amplifying, we're going to have more clients, we're going to have more staff, we're going to generate more revenue, without really looking at you're also scaling the negative. So I think that's really important. And so I want to expand on a couple things because you've used the word simplify multiple times. I had a gentleman on a few episodes ago, Brian Kramer, who works at now works at cars.com, a very large organization. And he said his owner, mentor, always talked about you have to simplify in order to amplify. And so this is sort of tying into what you're saying. Before you can grow or scale, you have to simplify. So is it a simplification of making sure everything's has a process or a structure? So I really need to understand when you say simplify, what are we simplifying?
Absolutely. So if I break it down to a really simple answer, it's you're simplifying your business model. But of course, when you look at that, there are so many different facets to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe you need to simplify in order to scale. So one of the areas that a business frequently needs to simplify is in their offer suite. If you look at what you're selling, who you're selling it to, and especially if you do something that's more boutique or very customized, you
Mm-hmm.
usually will have a lot of challenges scaling that. You'll add a lot of complexity into the business that way. So, one of the first places that we look at is which offers actually are performing the best in a business, which
Mm-hmm.
offers feel most aligned with where you want to take the business next. Just because something's historically performed well does not mean it's necessarily what you see for the next stage of the business. So, which offers do we want to go all in on and be able to scale into which clients do we want more of? And so, I think when you look at simplifying, a lot of times people just have a lot of offers. Sometimes,
Right.
if you look at the way you bring in clients, there's a lot of lead gen. I've got this free workshop over here and this free PDF download over here and this list and automation sequence over here. And there's just a lot. And again, when you're looking to scale, you do want to look at simplification. So, what is the offer or the small kind of suite of offers that you want to be scaling? And how do you want to approach that? How do you want to generate leads for that? How do you want to nurture those leads? And what's that client experience going to look like? You also want to look then about, well, what's the ecosystem that I need to be able to market, sell, and deliver on this? Who is the team that I need? And what are the systems that I can put in place or automations I can put in place to reduce dependency on people and room for error. So that to me is simplification, getting clear on what you need to do and getting rid of anything that's not that. And then making sure that you have the right ecosystem around you from a people, systems, tools, and really process perspective.
That's a great point because I've built a couple businesses and you're taking me down memory lane a little bit, both good and bad. But that idea of when you're starting something out, you don't know what's going to work. So you, to your point, is you're trying a little bit of everything, or you're trying different offerings, and a lot of times you do more just to get the generate a business. Someone comes to you and says, "Well, do you do this?" And you're thinking, "Sure, I can do that because I need the revenue." And so I really like that idea of before you can move to that next stage of whatever your business is, you have to look at it. And what I really loved was this idea of taking a moment to see what does it take to deliver that offering? Because even if that offering is working per se, but it takes 3 people to deliver on each one of those, or I need a team of people, then that idea of scaling, okay, well, if we double, then we need double the staff, and what's the new wage for these individuals coming in, and do I need more technology, or do I think it's easy to look at the revenue, and I keep going back to that. It's easy to say, well, it costs, we pick a number, $1,000 for every one of these, and we're selling X number. And boy, if we can double that, we'd have. But how much does it cost to deliver? I don't know. I mean, when you sit in front of multiple companies, I mean, your resume is very impressive. Is that hard for someone to let go of products or let go of offerings, especially if in some metric they're working?
It is the hardest thing for someone to do. And I joke that my business is lean out, right? Lean out is get rid of anything that's not adding value, anything that's not adding profit, so you can double down on what is. It sounds so common sense and so
Mhm.
simple in theory. It is the hardest thing to actually do because you have to let things go. You usually have some kind of attachment to those things, or there's people who really love those things and you feel like you're disappointing clients or
Right.
some of your original clients who invested in you and said yes, and now you're taking this thing away of theirs. And what ends up happening a lot of times in sessions with clients is we'll have the discussion and they'll say, no, I really do need to let this go. I understand this is a weight. It's taking too much time to deliver. It's keeping me
Mhm.
from doing this thing that I want. And they'll make the logical decision in the moment. But I always know that give it a couple days, maybe a week, month tops, and I will get the yeah, but phone call.
Right.
All right, well, I mean, I was really thinking about it and it sounded good, but,
I was
and
talking to the
then,
team and I was thinking and I mentioned it. It's funny how we do get attached to ideas or products and it is that growth and everybody says growth and we can use the word scale too, but growth personally, family. I mean, I have my oldest son is going to college. That's I have to let him go to go to
Mhm.
college, but to take products that you've invested your time in and you built and maybe they were the foundational offerings of your company and to let those go, it probably isn't. Yeah, like you said, in the moment I can draw it, show you why, and nod the head, and then sentiment comes in and does that. So how do you so if you get the yeah but phone call, what is it just repetition of what you were saying or how do you get them through this tough time?
Yeah, so there's a few different things. The first thing is just because you say no to something today does not mean it's a forever no. If that thing really haunts you and you really feel like you need to bring it back, you can. And the nice thing about that is usually when you are doing that, you're doing it from a different place. You've grown, your business has grown.
Mm,
So as you're bringing it back, you're reimagining it, you're breathing new life into it, and you usually can approach it in a smarter way that delivers more value and more profit. So it's actually not
definitely.
necessarily a bad thing to table things sometimes. But
Right.
usually what people need to be reminded of is why they initially said no to that thing at all. And it's usually to create space for something else.
Right.
Sometimes you're trying to simplify something because you are working too darn much and you need some sanity back. You need some space to be able to work on the business or to be able to actually enjoy your life instead of doing nothing but working. And so it's reminding them of, yeah, but this was the cost of keeping it. And is
Right.
that really more important than this other thing that we talked about? In other times, it's an opportunity for something new. It's an opportunity for scaling something else in the business or even introducing something new in the business. And the only way to create the space to do that for you or for your team is to let that thing go. So it's usually reminding them of the trade off. I understand, totally hear you. I get that feeling. But if you keep this, here's the impact it's going to have,
Right.
which is more important. And usually they rewind back and say, no, no, you're right. You're right. You're right. This is so important. And I really do want to do this. And then I layer in, and you can always bring it back. If
Right.
you
I
really truly feel like you need to, you can bring it back and reimagine it or find a way to integrate it in kind of the next iteration of what you're doing. So that's usually how we get past it, but inevitably the yeah, but happens. I'd say probably like 95% of the time.
Yeah, but I love that idea of I just said yeah, but no, the idea of reimagining it, bringing it back through a whole new lens, tabling it for a bit, but bringing it back. And when you pick it up, you look at it differently. You mentioned something, and I always like to make sure the audience, I hope you heard, is that idea of time, because I don't think leaders often value their own time because they're just working and they're always working. And if it's your business, you always feel like you're working. So sometimes that idea of, well, if it just takes a little extra time, it's not that important. But really understanding what else could I be doing with that time? How so if I so it takes an extra hour or two out of my day. Well, what could you be doing with those extra 2 hours towards these new initiatives versus just doing that? And so everyone, think about that. And what Krista's saying is that idea of your time is valuable. Where do you want to put your focus? And you can always bring it back. I like that. Gives you permission. One of the other things that you touched on, and I think it ties into this idea of growing when you're adding people, right? So you talked about processes and making sure they're buttoned up because we don't want to just bring new bodies into an organization to do work if we don't have our processes in place where we can get them off on the right foot, or else we're, again, going back to time, just throwing bodies at training instead of having it organized. But one of the struggles I had it in my company is when to bring people in. That idea of you have to, talking about being lean, sometimes your company runs heavy where maybe the revenue's not there yet, but I need to bring the people in because there's time to train people, but also I can't overwhelm my current staff or else quality goes down. But I need to hire people and maybe see a deficit or a little less profitability for the short term. Walk me through what, if someone is struggling with that concept, what do you, how can you help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's always a dance, right? In an
Mhm.
ideal world, we have this infinite amount of money that we're just sitting on. We've got all these perfect systems in place, and we hire the perfect person right when we need them, and they come in, follow the systems, and life is
Right.
great. They're generating revenue day two, right? I mean, that's what we all kind of wish that the hiring process is like. It is
Mhm.
nothing like that. And sadly, it never will be, right? It's always that dance of, I don't know if I can afford to bring this person in right now, but the team is at capacity. I'm at capacity. If I bring this person in and they're a good fit, I can actually grow faster. I can
Right.
scale. I can actually bring in more revenue. And so I think when you're looking at hiring, you want to look at it at a macro level and not a micro level. Because if you make the decision purely at that micro level, it's never going to be the right time. You're going to constantly be waiting to save enough in revenue or to just hit this next milestone to be able to bring the person in. But if
Mhm.
you look at the macro level and you really look at a couple different things, A, can the business take on the risk of bringing someone in right now if they don't work out? Because we know that not every person that we hire is going to be the perfect fit. So if you made a bad hire, would it put you out of business? Right?
Mm.
If the answer is
Good thought.
yes, it's probably not the right time to take that risk. But if you're like, no, it would hurt, it would really hurt, but I could bring somebody else in, great. Then from a risk perspective, that's okay. Then look at the potential. If this person comes into this role, how long will it take for them to be in a position where they're either directly generating revenue or they are doing whatever I'm bringing them into so that the business in some way, shape, or form can generate more revenue or increase our profitability? And if you're looking at that macro level and you have some confidence around that, it makes the decision a little bit easier to make and it makes it a little bit easier to understand the timing. The other thing that I like to always say is you never want to hire in a place of desperation where you're being really reactive, because although we all end up there, if you can try to do so proactively, you will make better hiring decisions
Right.
and you will be more likely to hire somebody good. And I kind of have that always be hiring mentality where
Mhm.
my very best hires are people that I didn't put something out on one of the hiring platforms and schedule a bunch of interviews for. It's somebody I met or got connected to when I was not looking. And I met the person and thought they would be perfect for this.
Right.
And sometimes I've hired somebody when I wasn't even hiring because I knew they were incredible and I wanted them. Other times I've nurtured the relationship until the point in time came when it made sense to bring them in. So I kind of feel like you should always be hiring in your mind. And then when you're ready to actually hire, that's where you want to do that analysis to say, what is the impact? What is the risk with this? And what realistically can I expect when I look over a horizon of 90 days or even 6 months in the business?
Right. So those are great points because I've think I feel that I'm at a good point with my company and my team and the woman who is running the day to day of our agency. We have a an understanding with, we'll call it our bandwidth. Where is everybody at? And we know at what threshold we have to start seriously looking. Now, to your point, is we're always looking. We're always looking for great people. I think I love that point. I think every organization should always be looking, thinking of it as in sports, every year they have a draft. So they're always looking to have the best team. And so they're bringing people in. I also like that idea of setting your horizon. I've had conversations with people where they'll say, oh, this person's going to cost me six figures. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Not really. How much are they really going to cost you for 90 days? To your point, is to figure it out, because again, depending on the role, depending on the learning curve and what they could do, at what point could the business be generating enough or increase of revenue, or to your point, they can do something in the company where it justifies their salary. Maybe revenue went up enough and now we're awash. We're not more, but they're paying for themselves. So if you break it down to maybe that 3-month nugget, to your point of saying, can my company withstand this? If I paid this much for 3 months and it just went, this is a complete failure, can I survive that? Versus looking, like you're saying, at the whole year salary, they're probably not going to be there for a year. So I like that idea of really knowing, can I handle this? Because I know there's companies that either just bring people in with a lot of hopes and dreams, but they're constantly in this, almost like they never really fill the position. They just keep running people through. And to your point is they lose that out. So let's pivot a little bit, because we touched on a little bit this idea of process. We hear it all the time. And, oh, you got to have your processes. Do you have your processes? In your business, when you're brought into a company to help them, is that, are the ones that are underperforming or struggling, is that one of the key things that is missing, that we don't have our processes documented, or everybody's doing things a little bit differently? Talk about the importance of that structure, that foundation, so that it can support scaling.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's 5 critical elements that you need, and I call it SPSTI. So you need strategy, planning, systems, team, and insights in place and really dialed in order to be able to scale in a sustainable way.
Mhm.
And when people don't have the systems, when they don't have the systems, which encompasses the processes, the tools, all of those different components, it is a big struggle. And so I do think it's important, but I also think that we hear so often the importance of, you've got to build your SOPs and you've got to have your processes and
Mhm.
you've got to have all of these things, that I think a lot of times people approach it almost like a project or a check in the box. Like, I'm going to just spend the next 3 months or 6 months. The team is going to document everything they're going to do. We're going to create all these SOPs, maybe toss it into a company playbook or something. And then we're going to be done. Everything's going to be great. We're going to be super efficient. It's going to work
Right.
wonderfully. And that's not reality. To me, that I see people really overemphasize and over document processes that never get used, creating processes for things that shouldn't be done at all.
Mhm.
And so I think that processes are very important. They are a critical piece. It's a lot of the work that I do with my clients, but I think that you need to approach it in a really smart and really simple way. I think you want to get clear first on what I call your strategic systems. So what are all the different parts and pieces of your business? How do they fit together? And what's the most critical thing that you need to sell your services, your offers, your products, and to deliver an exceptional client experience and be able to retain or refer new clients. And so
Mhm.
I think if you really look at those and dial in those at, again, more of a macro level, a strategic system level, then from there, you want to start breaking it down and saying, where do I need more detailed processes? Where is there an opportunity to look at tools or automations or things to really help simplify and reduce risk for error? Right. And so I think that's how you want to approach it, is more top down strategically instead of bottom up, sit at the desk, write all the the SOPs.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
it's
Right.
just a different, I think a different approach to it, but they are very important.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. I'm working with a client on that, and we had this conversation, and he was, want everything documented. And so he has somebody on their team who we're working together, but I kept saying, well, let's treat it like an outline of a book and start at the top and say, okay, this is a department, and what are the big rocks in the departments, and who's in charge, and what do they do? What are the responsibilities? And then you start fleshing them out, to your point, and then saying, well, let's just write this in a general outline of boom, 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 boom. Okay, great. This one, we got to go a little deeper. This one you might, but to your point is, or else you end up in this rabbit hole of documenting everything that by the time you write it, maybe it already changed, right? Versus keeping it at a higher level and then having a conversation with all of the stakeholders to say, how detailed do we need to be in order for the next person to come in and read this and be able to execute? As long as we have training, as long as someone's going to help guide the training, you're right. It doesn't have to be a catalog. It could be an overview. So I like that idea of starting with the big rocks first, and at each stage asking the question, because it might be department to department, role to role, needs to be more more involved. So let's talk about one other thing here as we move along. How did this start for you? Like, tell me a little bit about your journey to this point, because, you know, I love what you do. I think when I was researching you and your company, it just seems like it's a perfect fit for a lot of organizations, because a lot of times we as leaders, we can go into somebody else's business and give them advice and see things, but we can't see things right in front of ourselves. So how did you end up here? Like, what caused the light switch for you to say, I'm really good at this?
It's such a winding and unexpected journey, as I feel like most entrepreneurial journeys are. But I was
Mhm.
actually a fine art major in college, and I had wanted to start my own creative business. I wasn't entirely sure what. I eventually did launch a jewelry business. But as I was getting close to graduation, I'm thinking, if I'm going to run a business and I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I should probably know a thing or two about business. So I
Mhm.
ended up switching majors and getting a business degree, graduating with all of this college debt. And I was like, I'll just work for a couple of years while I figure out what I want to do for my business. And I ended up getting hired at a company that did lean manufacturing. And I ended up being brought in because they needed me to start right away as a consultant. I didn't know what lean was. I didn't know what consulting was. I was just excited I had a job. And so I said yes. And that ended up completely reshaping the entire next 23 years of my life in a way that I never could have imagined. But while I was doing this lean consulting, I did start my jewelry business. And the business did really well. It scaled really, really quickly. And I did not have in place the things that I really needed to be able to sustain that scaling. And I almost put myself out of business. I had a lot of implications to my health from working way, way, way too much and not taking good care of myself because all I
Mhm.
did was work, constant stress, just a lot of the side effects that happen when you scale without first simplifying or systematizing or really being prepared for it. And so I ended up taking what I was doing with these big Fortune 50 clients and saying, how can I apply this to my business? It's not the same application, but the principles are the same. How
Right.
can I lean out my own business? And I did, and that completely transformed and turned that business around. Then organically, people started asking and saying, how did you do that with your business? Can you help me? And here we are now. So
Here
now
you are
this is
now.
what I continue to do with businesses of kind of all shapes and sizes. But I especially love the service based kind of coach consulting expert space.
Great. I love it. And so explain a little bit, because when I was doing, as I said, the research, I always like people's offerings as well. So yours, this lean out method, and you talk about the four pillars of the lean out method. Walk me through that. So those who are listening, one, if they need your services, they know exactly what you do, but also for people out there who are going, I'm really finding great information here, and I'm going to try some of this on my own. What are the four pillars of the lean out method?
Absolutely. So the four pillars are context, clarity, commitment, and Kaizen. And for anyone who's not aware of Kaizen, it's a lean concept. It means making small, continuous changes and improvements for the better. And so when I think about business, when I think about where most people end up having unnecessary complexity, or when they end up not really loving what they do anymore, things don't really feel aligned, it's because they're missing the first pillar, which is context. So context is where you want to have clarity on what your next level vision is. Where do you want to actually take things? What do you want? What are your values, right? What's right for your business? What's not right for your business in the near term and in the long term? Once you have that, you want to have an aligned business model. A lot of times people have this brilliant vision, but if you look at the business model that they have, they're never going to be able to realize that vision with their current structure in place.
Mm,
And so, context to me is getting really clear on where you want to take things in the future, as far in the future as you currently can see. That varies for people. And then making sure that you have a business model that's in alignment and will get you there. From there, the clarity piece is great. Now that you know where you want to go, you've got the right structure around you. What do you need to actually be doing in the next 90 days to get there? How do you
right.
move the needle towards that? What are the right goals to be focused on? And how can you and your team work together to move the business forward in the most simple, streamlined way possible? Commitment is things are going to get tough. You're going to have your yeah buts. All of those things are going to happen.
Right.
How do you keep going? How does everybody stay committed and focused on what the outcome is, what the goal is, and make smart strategic decisions to get there? And a lot of times that ends up being as much personal development and growth as it is business related. And
Right.
then finally, Kaizen is that reflection. How are we doing? Right? Are things working? Are they not working? Where do we need to pivot? Where do we need to reimagine and change some things? So to me, it's a really simple structure, but it's a really powerful structure. And it kind of applies to every single thing that you do in life, not just your business, but it works
Right.
beautifully for a business.
No, I love that because it sounds, I like things that conceptually sound simple that I can understand. And right there, that was very easy to follow, the context of where do I want to go? What do I really want my business to be? I think that is a very important question for leaders because why you started your business and now you want to take it to a different level or you have opportunities or you need to pivot. I think you really have to have that context because going back to our earlier discussion, we may have to let things go. We might have to let some things that worked or got us to point B. Someone said it, what got you here isn't going to get you there, so to speak. And I love that. And then the clarity and the commitment. So on that commitment, it's I find that the best leaders understand that the most. Yes, they need clarity and they have that, but it's that idea of I know my team's going to hit the wall sooner or later. They're going to lose faith in the vision. They're going to have doubts. I talked about this topic a couple episodes ago about how do you help your team as a leader get through those times. So when someone's asking you that, do you have any tips that someone who's sitting out there going, either my team is losing faith and I have to re-energize them, or I know it's going to happen and I need a new tool in my toolbox, so to speak. How do you help leaders in that situation?
Yeah, it's usually, if you think about root cause, there's a couple things that are going on. We as leaders frequently feel like everyone knows the vision, everyone knows the goals, everyone has crystal clarity on why they're doing what they're doing and how it's important and fits into the bigger picture. The reality is, the person that's sitting at their desk doing the work on your team probably has no clue or forgot what it is. And they're trying to figure out, like, do I need to do this? Why do I need to do this? What's the impact? And so I think the first thing is we want to share the why behind the what frequently, so much that we feel like we're repeating ourselves and people must be sick of us saying it. But I
Right,
think it's really important that people understand not just what they need to do and what success looks like, but why they're doing it and the impact of them doing it or not doing it. I think that's really important that people understand that why. So that's the first piece, is I think looking at that and making sure that someone has their own clarity and context for the work that they're doing. But then the next piece of it is, if somebody's really stuck, if somebody's really struggling, where do they need support? Sometimes they're not the right person for the role, right? Maybe it's a not right
hmm,
fit, but more often than not, maybe they need some training, maybe they need some time with you, maybe they need some more understanding of what success actually looks like. Most people show up, want to do a good job, and really want to deliver. It's just they don't always know what they're delivering or why they're doing what they're doing, or they don't always have the right support and the right things and kind of tools and resources at their disposal to do a good job. And so I usually find it's one of those things. So
hmm.
recommunicate vision, re-level set people and their goals and why they're doing what they're doing, and then ask them what they need to be successful and provide that to them either yourself or get resources for them for it.
I love that. I love that because I See, I really think it's part of it is that first point that you made is that you assume as a leader, everybody knows. And a lot of times, maybe they did it one time, but they're not sure of what it is or why or how. And maybe we're not communicating, to your point, updating them on the results of their efforts. So they're just working and they don't know if it's working or not. Or maybe your vision has changed a bit, but you assume through some sort of osmosis, they're going to understand what's going on. I really like that. And also that time, the other piece that you mentioned was time. You have to dedicate time to your team to know why they're hitting the wall, why they're possibly, do they not believe in the vision anymore? Or do they think we should be doing something else? You have to be willing to have those conversations so that we can get everyone back on track, as you were saying, that are going to have the commitment, that are going to get re-energized. I like that word re-energized, because I think that is a key point that some leaders just assume, well, they know, they've been here forever, or they should know better, or instead of looking in the mirror and saying, I'm obviously as a leader not giving them something, because to your point, I agree with you. I think most people come to work and want to do a good job. And a lot of times they think they're doing the right things. And if they're not, that's your fault as the leader, not their fault. It's your fault. So I really love that. And I really love the way you're very clear with presenting the ideas. And I'm hoping, audience, I hope you're taking notes, because there is just so much here for you to take away, because scaling a business, hiring people, helping people through the wall, like these are all topics that we've talked about, but I just love your perspective on this as well. So as we wrap up this portion here, when someone, how, I don't know if it's the right question, but I'm going to ask anyway. How long does this normally take? Like, is there a time frame where like you get involved with a company, and is it, I'm assuming it's project to project, but is this like something that is going to take 6 months or a year or less? Well, walk me through that, because I know someone's out here going, well, how long does this stuff take?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, right, I mentioned strategy planning, systems, team insight. Those are not isolated things. There's a lot of overlap between them, but you're usually not focusing on all of them at the same time. So it
Mhm.
really depends on what we're doing. One of the key places I love to start with a business is ensuring that they've got a really good strategic planning framework in place, because the way you get things done, the way you align your team around a common set of goals to make that commitment to keep things moving forward is to have that framework in place. So usually I start there with them, and that takes about 90 days. It takes about 90 days to get in place, and usually about 6 months for the team to really start to adopt it and it to
Right.
become how they work and how they think, as opposed to just, wait, what was that thing I was supposed to do again?
Mhm.
So that's more like the first 6 months or so. And it takes about the same amount of time if our focus is more from a system perspective
Right.
and from a team perspective. So you lump all that together, and it can take a year. And it can certainly evolve, because it's, unfortunately, if you're listening, you don't do it once, check the box, and you're done. It's kind of a
Right.
forever ongoing kind of thing. So I'll have, sometimes people will work together for 6 months or a year. They'll go off, they'll do some really amazing things in their business. They're ready to reimagine and change. And then they'll come back and we'll re-engage and take a fresh look at it. And the second time and third time, the timeline keeps shrinking.
Right. But it becomes more like a coach.
Mhm.
They're coming to you saying, I need assistance. And then I'm good for the time being. Let me go run. And you say, great, we'll be here when you need us. And they come back. And, it's that idea of, I use the imagery of bouncing a basketball on an escalator, where there's all these ups and downs, but the trend is here. So, you might have a dip down, but you're a little further than you were last time we talked, but you're constantly there. And so I really love that. So I appreciate this. This was really a very helpful episode. I hope you all out there appreciate that. So at the end of every episode, what we do is we ask a few questions, just random questions. I always like to see where your brains are at. So for you, because you're dealing with so many different types of industries and helping people succeed and to maximize their potential. So what is something that you're currently reading, watching, listening to that's inspiring you, that you would recommend to the audience?
Oh gosh, currently I'm reading The Gap and the Gain. I know that's not a brand new book, but it is such a good one. And it is such a reminder to be focused on the gain and not on the gap, and also to recognize where your clients are focused on the gap and not the gain so that you can support them through that. So, highly recommend that one.
Great. Good. We'll put that into the show notes as well. Second, what's something that you're working on for yourself personally that a year from now, you're going to say, I'm glad I invested my time in that?
Oh gosh, right now, my big focus is health and wellness. I spent far too long laser focused on my business, which was great from a business result perspective, not so great from a health perspective.
Mhm.
So I have been walking every day. I've been working out every night. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the change in me over this next year.
Great, great, great. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of my guests have been talking about health. It seems that all of us over these last couple years have been head down, working very hard, and we're picking our heads up and going, "Ooh, I gotta get back into shape a little bit here because I'd like to be around to enjoy all of the fruits of our hard work." So, bravo, bravo. Last question. We talked about a lot of different things. And as I said, audience, I hope you took notes and I hope you listen to this over and over again because I'm have my own notes and I'm going back and listening to this and giving it to my team to listen to. But if there was one thing that you hoped the listeners would get out of our conversation, what's that one thing?
Simplify before you scale. Just scaling is going to scale everything. So make sure that you're scaling the right things and you're not scaling noise and complexity and overwork and overwhelm. And simplifying is hard from a commitment perspective, but it's not hard from an action perspective. So if you can make that commitment, you can not only reduce the amount that you and your team are working, reduce the complexities today, but you can set yourself up to be able to scale in a really sustainable way into the future. And so that would be my big takeaway.
Great, great. I love that. I love that. That simplify. We all need to simplify because we do tend to overcomplicate some things. Thank you again. So this was great. I want to know from you where people could find and connect with you because I think you are a valuable person for my audience to be able to connect and ask questions and learn more about your organization. So where can they connect? Where do you hang out on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is leanoutmethod.com. You can kind of find all the things there.
Mhm.
And if you like this discussion, I have a podcast as well called Lean Out Your Business. You can go to leanoutpodcast.com to access that. And I spend my time on Instagram. I love Instagram, my personal account. It's more of me as the person, not necessarily me as the business owner, but it's Crista Grasso on Instagram. If you want to come see what I'm up to, see my cute dog, all the things.
That's awesome. Yeah. So folks, please connect and please go to her website and listen to her podcast. Again, such great content. I really do appreciate it. So audience, you know the drill. At the end of every episode, I'm going to ask you to do one thing, and that is think about someone in your network that could benefit from the conversation we just had with Crista. Share this episode out. You're going to help them improve. So do the right thing, share it out. Again, don't forget to subscribe and like. The fact that you spent time with us today means the world to me because there is so much content out there, so many places you could listen, but I hope you found the value out of this conversation. So again, thank you, Crista, so much for being here. I appreciate it. And like we say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but now Crista gave you a few more tools to help you become the leader that you want, both personally and professionally. We'll see you next time. We're here every single week. Thanks again. And I look forward to crossing paths again with you, Crista.
Thanks so much for having me.